Hello everyone! What I have for you today is a weird Thanksgiving-related double review. It's weird because nobody in their right mind would join these two movies together. About all they have in common is that tangentially and in part, they both take place on Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is kind of an underserved holiday in the cinematic sense, and when I realized I had two films on my watch list that could arguably be called Thanksgiving movies, I thought, hey, why not do something with that? I probably should have done this video last week in the lead up to the holiday instead of after it, but oh well. The two movies in question are 1955's Teenage Crime Wave, an exploitation film about the rising threat of juvenile delinquency, and 1947's The Late George Apley, a comedy drama about generational conflict within a starchy Bostonian family set in 1912. First up, Teenage Crime Wave, which focuses on a young person named Jane who's only guilty of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. She gets tangled up with a couple of hoodlums as they take an older couple hostage on their farm, hiding out after they commit a murder. I learned about this movie while I was doing research on Frank Griffin. This is Frank Griffin. He plays the son who comes home to find his parents being held at gunpoint. He also played the cutie patootie pilot who gets 3 seconds of screen time in The Giant Claw. I liked him based on those 3 seconds, and I've always been curious about him, so one day a few months ago I did a deep dive, and what I found proved so fascinating that I ended up making a video about him, which I shared over on my Ko-fi page for my Ko-fi supporters. This isn't a shameless plug for exclusive content, it's just a statement of fact for how we got here. Looking over the films he appeared in, which are not many, Teenage Crime Wave seems to have been his largest role, so I wanted to check it out to see how he was. I found the movie on YouTube. The upload calls it a Thanksgiving film. I meant to watch it a couple of months ago. I didn't mean to save it until November, but here we are. As it turns out, the holiday doesn't bear much relevance. The gang bursts in on the couple as they're preparing dinner, and their son is expected to arrive soon. Also, they go somewhere that turns out to be closed for the whole day. But other than that, it could take place at any other time of the year. Initially, I was put off by this film's dismally low IMDb rating of 3.7 out of 10, but after skimming some of the reviews, I began to suspect it might not be so bad. And it wasn't. I don't think I would rate it lower than a 6.0. Sure, it's a low-budget film, there are some stiff moments, Tommy Cook's ringleader is pretty hammy, and as many of the negative reviews state, the actors playing the teens are full-blown adults. But it's a tense little thriller, there are some snappy lines of dialogue, the peril feels real, and they chose an interesting location to shoot the finale. So why does this movie have a 3.7? Well, what I learned from the reviews, and I'm sure that there are a couple people who've already gone ahead and mentioned this in the comments before waiting to see if I brought it up myself, is that this movie was featured on Mystery Science Theater 3000. Now, I like a dose of MST3K from time to time, and there are movies that certainly earned their roasting, and they are improved by the funny commentary. However, I feel some movies didn't deserve the ridicule they got and the stigma that became attached to them as a result. You know it's a fact that a lot of people will say, oh, this movie was on MST3K, it must be trash. Prospective viewers who know approach it expecting it to be stupid, bad, cheap, campy, boring, whatever, and they look for that stuff. They're not giving the movie any chance to be good as they go into it. Do a lot of movies that they covered, or that they did afterward when they became Cinematic Titanic or Riff Tracks or whatever they're doing now, I think they're still Riff Tracks, do a lot of the movies that they covered fall into one or more of those categories? Yeah, but not all of them. And while this certainly isn't a great movie, I consider it one of those exceptions. One of the biggest criticisms seems to be of the ages of the younger actors, so out of curiosity I did a quick check. In 1955, Tommy Cook and Sue England were 25, and Molly McCart was 26, so they are older than presented. But not outrageously old. For comparison, James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause, same year, 1955, was playing a troubled teen at 24, and Marlon Brando in The Wild One, 1953, was 29. But nobody bats an eye at them. I just think we should be a little more forgiving, considering what was typical for the time. As for technical issues, there aren't that many. There are a few continuity errors, and there's malfunctioning sound in the climactic fight, but it's a pretty well-made film altogether. I've seen other low-profile crime thrillers from this period, and this is about on par with those. As for Frank Griffin, the guy who brought me here, well, he's good at standing around looking worried or looking angry, but his performance is a little stiff. I don't know how much of that has to do with the script, which forces this decorated war veteran to be impotent and indecisive and to stand there and take it as he's being insulted, but a more experienced actor may have brought a little more nuance and made him seem less inert. And now we move from a film entrenched in 50s culture to one entrenched in 1912. Note, I didn't actually watch these two movies back to back, and I don't recommend that you do either. It just doesn't make sense. But I can review them back to back. The Late George Apley is a comedy drama starring Ronald Colman as the patriarch of the famous Apleys of Boston. He's a very correct man, proud of his heritage and his ties to Harvard. He heads various committees, likes everything just so, etc. It's during the family's Thanksgiving dinner that he gets wind of dissension among the ranks, for his two adult children have formed unsuitable attachments outside of their prim social circle. This was a diverting film, helmed by one of my most favorite actors, who is lovely, as always. It's largely thanks to Ronald Colman's inherent graciousness, warmth, and appeal that the character retains an endearing quality, even as he meddles and uses his influence in some insufferable ways. Despite this movie's Americanishness, many of the family members are played by actors who originally hail from the UK, including Colman and Peggy Cummins as his feisty daughter. Their posh British or British-American hybrid accents are surprisingly fitting for upper-crust Bostonians of the pre-war period. I think Colman does a fine job portraying an overbearing man who doesn't realize he's overbearing. I just wish I liked the character better. It's Ronald Colman. I love him. I want to love the character he's playing. But we can't always get what we want. And as far as that goes, 1947 was a tough year. It was a great year for him. He was in A Double Life, which is the role for which he won the Best Actor Oscar. That's wonderful. A Double Life happens to be one of my least favorite of his movies. I actually felt I began to like this character less as he began having epiphanies. Throughout the story, characters encourage him to alter his staunch perspective, bend a little, remember his own youth, and so on. As a product of these gentle reproofs and his self-reflections, he tries to make things right. But he's still meddling! Right up to the end! I guess you could say he becomes a more open-minded man while remaining true to himself, but the film's final sequence just left me feeling dissatisfied and perplexed, and I conferred with my dad, and he felt the same way. Depending on your perspective, the story may be a downer. A pompous, out-of-touch man begins to lose the respect of his children and his community. But thankfully, there is playful humor throughout that acts as a buoy. There are some funny lines and some funny bits of business. Edna Best plays George's patient, subtle wife, Richard Hayden, his awkward cousin, and Percy Wareham, his slightly boozy but clear-eyed brother-in-law. It's Mildred Natwick who steals every scene, though, as George's plain-spoken sister. She was a hoot. Every time she showed up, she was funny. The weaknesses in the cast are among the younger generation. Peggy Cummins is alright, although she's a bit cliché as the breathless young rebel, but it's Richard Ney as the son and Vanessa Brown as his second cousin and intended fiancée, Agnes, who leaves something to be desired. The themes, the setting, and certain imagery put me in mind of some other movies, namely Cheaper by the Dozen, The Little Foxes, The Magnificent Ambersons, and Meet Me in St. Louis. I should also mention that while the first part takes place on Thanksgiving Day, it then moves forward and ends up in spring or summer. So if we're talking in terms of minutes on the clock, Teenage Crime Wave is more of a Thanksgiving movie. There's no Thanksgiving dinner, though, and this does have that. I never thought I'd see a movie where Ronald Colman is carving a Thanksgiving turkey. You could call this a Christmas movie, though, if the appearance of snow, ice skating, wintry attire, roasted chestnuts, and pine bough decorations are enough to make it qualify. And thus concludes this random, offbeat, 2-in-1 Thanksgiving movie review. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll be back next Saturday to share what else I saw in November. Thanks for watching.